All right, everybody, welcome back to part 2 of Jeong chapter 10. We are in Logos Beta, Peri Philemonos, Kai Onesimu, that is concerning Philemon and Onesimus. This is the continuation of the story about the former slave master Philemon and his runaway slave Onesimus. This is the expanded fan fiction of Paul's letter to Philemon that we find in the New Testament. Just a quick note before we get started, it would be a good idea for you to have both your physical copies of Jeong and Croy in front of you, as I will be referencing certain pages and charts. I will also be frequently pausing or asking you to pause the video as we are moving through the lesson. That way you can seek out the answer yourself before I go ahead and tell it to you if I'm asking a question. You know, a lot of learning happens when you are using your brain to actively recall information. If you're just passively listening to me speak, you'll learn something, but you'll learn more if you put in the work to try and recall an answer or use some critical thinking to arrive at a solution before I give it to you. So just have your hand on the spacebar ready to pause the video when I give you the indication to do so. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and get started. We're in Philemon, the story of Philemon and Onesimus, Logos Beta. Ein pota hophilemon, kyrios kakos ton doulon. Go ahead and pause there for a moment and try and read this sentence. All right, presuming that you had paused the video. Well, what's going on with this first word here? This is one of the most common words we see in the entire New Testament. This is the word was. So if you have your Croy reader right next to you, go ahead and turn to page 55 and look at paragraph 67, the imperfect indicative of a me. Again, what does a me mean? That's the infinitive for to be. So that word I am, you are, he, she, or it is, or in this case, in the imperfect tense, was. Remember, the imperfect means incomplete. Perfect is Latin for complete. Imperfect means incomplete. We're talking about an action that happened in the past for an unspecified period of time. And so this word ein, that's the eta nu, if I look to that chart on page 55, I see that in what? Go ahead and pause the video, try and find it. Right. It is the singular third person of a me. He, she, or it was. So if I read this sentence literally or without using proper English syntax, was once or was before Philemon Lord bad of slaves. That's, of course, the genitive plural. So in good English, this would be Philemon. Of course, that's in the nominative case. If you don't recognize this ending here in the nominative, that's because, of course, the names often don't decline as we would like them to. But as I've said before, the definite article is your best friend. The definite article never lies to you. And we recognize this as a nominative singular. So we know this is the subject of the sentence. Philemon was once no definite article, so that is a indefinite, a bad or a wicked master of slaves. Philemon was once a wicked master of slaves because sunegen tus doulos kai elegen autois logus kakus. Okay, I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure out what's going on in these two words that I highlighted, sunegen and elegen. Go ahead and pause right now. Okay, I hope the answer that you were able to come up with was imperfect. Now, why does this kind of look like an imperfect and kind of not, right? You might have recognized the imperfect ending, epsilon nu. You should have those memorized right now. What are the endings to the imperfect? On, s, e, or n, because there's a movable n depending on whether or not the first letter in the next word begins with a consonant or a vowel. So those endings are on, s, e, amen, ete, on. For a chart, you can either refer to page 54, top of page 54, paragraph 65 in Jeong, in Croy, but you also have one in the corresponding lesson in Jeong. So that is a third person singular ending. But where is that epsilon augment that we're so accustomed to seeing slapped onto the front of verbs that we want to see in the imperfect? Well, of course, Sunegen is from sunago. I'll write that out right now. Sun plus ago. Sunago. Remember, lead together. Together lead, or if I say it together, sunago as one word, that is to gather. Now, with these compound words, when we put our augments on, that is putting the epsilon in the beginning of the, or at the beginning of the verb to show that it's in the imperfect, it goes in between the prefix and the root. So that would be sun, or sigma upsilon nu epsilon, alpha, gamma, omega, but then we're going to scratch off the omega and slap on our imperfect ending, which is going to be epsilon nu. Put all that together, and we get sune alpha, gamma, epsilon nu. But this does not, this isn't working for us. At least it didn't for the Greeks who made up this language. And so when we have an epsilon and an alpha crashing together like that, they are going to turn into an eta. Now, if you want a more in-depth explanation as to how that works, you can read paragraph 66 that begins on page 54 in our Croy reader, Forms of the Augment. And if you look at the middle of the page, on page 55 in Croy, you see that exact example, sunegon, as the book shows it. So, as the epsilon and the alpha crash together, turn into an eta, we have sunegen, right? Sigma upsilon nu, eta, gamma epsilon nu. And that is exactly now what we see in the sentence. Sunegen was gathering, tus dulus kai elegen autois logus cacus. This one's a little bit easier to see. We've got our epsilon augment at the beginning and our very predictable ending. Again, once again, the endings in the imperfect are on se, amen ete on, and this is a very predictable third person singular, just like we had with sunegen. So that whole section again. Hati sunegen, tus dulus kai elegen autois logus cacus. So how would we then translate this? Philemon was once a bad lord of slaves, a bad master of slaves, because he was gathering the slaves and was saying or was speaking to them bad words or evil words. He was using a potty mouth around them. So that is a perfectly fine translation, because he was saying to them, he was saying to the slaves, or was gathering the slaves and was saying to them bad words. But the sense that is coming across is something known as the habitual or progressive sense. That is, he's describing events that happened in the past that would happen continually. So, how would I gloss this into an English sentence that sounds a little bit prettier, or a little bit more suitable for biblical translation? We would typically translate this sentence as, because he would gather the slaves and he would speak to them evil words. Okay, so the whole sentence now translated into English. Philemon was once a bad lord of slaves. He was a bad master of slaves because he would gather the slaves and he would speak bad words to them. I say to them because this is in the dative, to them. Now let's keep going. Kai eiken Philemon entais emerais ekainais adelphon kai adelphane. And we'll pause there. What's going on with this word, eiken? I want you to open your Croy reader to page 54. We're still in paragraph 66, Forms of the Augment, and pause the video and see if you can figure out what's going on with this word, aiken. Okay, presuming that you paused, we have another situation very similar to sunegen here, not because there is a prefix, but because the form that we end up seeing in the text is a little bit irregular. So what word is aiken? What's the root word if I were to look that up in the lexicon? I'd see epsilon chi omega. right? So the omega goes away and we see our imperfect ending. That's the the third person singular. And then we have an augment. Now we don't want to have two epsilons together, Aiken, like Aaron. No, Aiken. That doesn't work. Uh, so what happens when I have an epsilon plus an epsilon? Well, it's a little bit irregular. And if you found the answer on page 54, you would see epsilon iota aiken. Now, to our English ears and our horrible pronunciation as I have, we might not be able to tell the difference between an epsilon iota and an epsilon, but this is how it's going to appear in print. Now, you wonder, how do I ever memorize that epsilon plus epsilon equals epsilon iota? Well, you're not going to memorize it as a formula. You're just going to see this in print enough times that you're going to grow to recognize this as an imperfect. And even if you didn't understand that epsilon and epsilon together equals an epsilon iota, you would recognize epsilon nu as our imperfect ending. So, Aiken, that is not he had, but he was having, or he would have, right? So, and, Kai means and, Philemon would have in those days, he would have in those days, or he had in those days, no a definite article, so this is going to be indefinite, a brother and a sister, Adelphon kai Adelphane. And he had in those days, and Philemon had in those days, a brother and a sister. But we're not done here. The sentence isn't completed yet. But now, noon, ala noon, thelusin autoi apoktenen auton. Right, so he had a brother and sister, and everything was good. But now, ala noon, thelusin, that is they desire, apoktenen. So apokteno means what? I kill. Apothnesko means I die. And this is in the infinitive, ain ending. To kill him. But noon, they, with a usin ending, so that's remember we have thelusin autoi. That autoi is redundant because the they, that third person plural is baked into our verb, the usin ending. So how would I translate that? Thelusin autoi. They themselves. But now they themselves, what they themselves desire to kill him. So he had in those days a brother and sister, but now they themselves, his brother and sister, desire to kill him. But apothneskusin, hati ekusin, hamatian, en tais cardias auton. So, but now they desire to kill him, but they are dying because they have sin in their hearts. That is what sin does to us. The consequence of sin is death, says Paul. So his brother and sister desire to kill him, but now they themselves are dying because they have sin in their hearts. Eke, that is our present active indicative, very familiar, de Philemon. But Philemon has, so his brother and sister are dying, but Philemon has zoein, that is, they have life, kai, and alus adelphus kai adelphas, and te ecclesia te en colosses. So his brother and his sister are dying because they have sin in their hearts, but Philemon has life and other brothers and sisters in the church, the in Colossae church, the church that is in Colossae. Kakos kurias en poto ho Philemon ala nun doulos estin tu Christu. Go ahead and pause the video and try and translate that sentence yourself. Okay, presuming that you had paused it. Bad Lord was once Philemon. Philemon was once, or Philemon was before, a indefinite article, because there's no definite article here. Philemon was once before a bad lord, ala nun, but now, doulos estin tu Christu. So remember the third person singular of estin, we've got he already baked in there, in the verb. But now, he is a slave of Christ. That's in the genitive. Tu Christu, of Christ. He was once a bad master before, but now he is a slave of Christ, or he is a servant of Christ, depending on how you would prefer to translate doulos. Are we servants of Christ? Are we slaves of Christ? That's a homiletical decision. Okay, let's keep going. Hi, that's how we're beginning our sentence here. Also, or and, se meiron sunagontai ente ecclesia hi adelphoi hati thelusin akuein tu philemonas. Go ahead and pause the video right here and try and translate that sentence. Okay, presuming you paused. Se meiron, that's a relatively new word. It means today. And today, sunagontai ente ecclesia. We'll pause there for a moment. Sunagontai. What's going on with this ending? Right, so if I were to look up sunago in the lexicon, what would I see? I would see sunago with a omega ending. That's the present active indicative. But what kind of ending is this? Ontai. Pause the video and try and figure that out. What ending is this? Ontai. So let's go through our endings again. What's the present active indicative? O ace a, amen ete use, and then the middle passive, omai e etai, omatha este ontai. That's that third plural passive voice. So sunago is to gather. Sunagontai are gathered, passive voice. And today, are gathered in the church. They are gathered in the church. Who's gathered in the church? Hoi adelphoi, the brothers. Hati thelusin akuen tu philemonas. So if we were to translate that, and today the brothers are gathered in the church. Why? Hati thelusin akuen tu philemonas, because they desire to hear, or they desire to listen to Philemon. So again, what's this ending here? U, that is our genitive. Now I look at Philemon or Philemonos. That doesn't look like a genitive to me. That's because a lot of names don't decline as we would expect other words to. But how do I know that's in the genitive? Well, because the definite article hasn't lied to me. It never lies to you. It's your best friend. And akuo takes the genitive. You hear of somebody, if I were to speak literally. So, and today, the brothers are gathered in the church because they desire to hear of Philemon, or to listen to Philemon. Ti lege autois. And what are they saying? Excuse me. And what, that's the third singular, and what does he say to them? Plural. What does he say to them? This is what he's saying. Lege, he says, or he speaks, perites protes zoes autu tes ento oiku autu. Pause the video and try and translate that yourself. Okay. He speaks concerning tes protes zoes, the prior life, or the first life, or he's speaking about his life before his conversion to Christianity. He speaks about his first life in his house. That is, he was a master in a house with slaves, and he's telling them about his first life. He's telling about his life before he converted. Philemon lege. So Philemon says, ente prote zoe, in the first life, mu, so in my prior life, in my first life, akon, theus tulithu, kai anabainon eista hera, ton theon mu. Go ahead and pause the video and try and translate that sentence yourself. Okay, what's going on with akon? Well, as we saw before, if I can scroll up, aken, we had already talked about where that form is coming from, but now we just see a different ending. So again, what are the imperfect endings? On se, amen ete on. It doesn't make sense for that to be a third plural. So we know that is a first singular, imperfect from echo, right? Echo, I have. So he's saying, in my before life, or in my first life, I would have Theus tulithu, gods of stone, kai anebainon estahira ton theon mu. Okay, pause the video, open your, pause the video right now and try and figure out what this word is. Okay, remember, we've got a bunch of verbs in this chapter that we have now with prefixes. So what is this word in the lexicon if I were to look it up? I would see on, a, by, no. On a bino, it means to go up. So bino, to walk. Ana means top or up. On a bino, to walk up. You walk up to the temple because the temple is usually on a hill. However, as you could probably guess, we are dealing with the imperfect. Instead of anabino, we have anebinon. So how does that epsilon get here? Well, this alpha is just going to go away. It's going to be replaced with an epsilon because that is taking the place of the alpha. We get rid of our omega because we're working in the imperfect. We slap on our imperfect ending, and there it is, folks, anebinon. Uh, in my first life, I would have gods of stone, and I would go up Estahera ton theon mu. I would go up into the temple of my gods. But now, noonday, and remember this is post-positive day. You never see a sentence beginning with day, always after the first or second words. I think in some instances maybe even the third or fourth, but you probably won't see that in Jeong. You see that occurring after the first word, noonday. But now, uk anabainon. Now, this is how you would see it appear in the lexicon. This is a present active indicative. So this is excellent that we have these two words here next to each other so you can compare them. Anebainon, I was going. Anabino, I am going up, present tense. But now, not, so negative, but now I don't go up into that temple, or excuse me, into those temples. It's in the plural. But Allah, erkomai, I go, eistain ecclesian tautain. But now I go into this church. I attend this church, is what he's saying. No longer offering up sacrifices and incense to gods of stone in the temples, because it's plural temples. Tahira ekaina. So in his previous religion, as a Gentile, he would offer incense to and offerings to multiple different temples, to multiple different gods, depending on what he was asking for. But now he worships the one God, and he worships that one God in the ecclesia, that is in that gathering, that assembly of Christians. Hypota akon adelphon kai adelphane. And before and once I was having, and once I had, in those days I had adelphon, a brother, kai adelphane, and a sister. Thelusin, they desire, de autoi. So thelusin, de autoi, right? Autoi is redundant. We could just have thelusin de, they desire, but because we're putting that in there, we're adding emphasis. But they themselves desire gain from go. We've got an infinitive ending, to lead. But they themselves desire to lead me, eistain alein ecclesian tain en colosses, into another assembly in colosses. So this word in Colossae. So this word ecclesia, and ecclesia right here as we would see it appear in the lexicon, in a Christian sense, it means church. In Greek, we call the church the ecclesia. But in its secular sense, what it means is assembly. So when we're using this word ecclesia in a non-Christian sense, as Philemon is in this sentence, it just means the gathering, the assembly. So his brother and his sister, who haven't converted to Christ in this story, they desire to lead him into another assembly in the same city, in Colossae. Excellent. Let's keep going. You with me so far? Good. We are 24 minutes into this. I hope this is valuable for you. This is a good review for me as well. Let's keep reading. Why are his brother and sister desiring to lead him into a different assembly? Well, here's why. Thelusin gar krinein kai apaktenein me. So we'll end there for a moment. Pause the video and see if you can translate that sentence. For they desire to judge and to kill me. That's why they want to lead him into another assembly. Hati, because methetes emi to Christu. Methetes. Pause the video and see if you can tell me what case is this? Nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative? That's kind of a tricky one. I don't blame you if you didn't find it. Remember, we had a couple chapters ago a couple of nouns that ended with ace in the nominative case. I don't have a memory device for that. You're just going to have to figure that out. Prophetes, mathetes. There's a number of other ones that you'll encounter as we expand our vocabulary in the Greek language. But that's in the nominative case because Amy, I am, mathetes, a disciple, a student, to Christu. So they desire to judge and to kill me because I am a disciple of Christ. Ti ophelo legein autois. What must I say to them? Ti dunamai legein. What am I able to say? So dunamai, that means having the ability or power to do something. Ti is what? Legein in the infinitive, lego. So what am I able to say to them? And we'll see what the church then answers him. Hoi hagioi. Go ahead and pause the video and try and figure that out. Hoi hagioi. So that is an adjective, hagios. But now, because we have that adjective and we put that that ending on here, and we have it now coming after a definite article, how would I translate ha hagioi? Well, that's the substantive use of the adjective, and so we would say the holy ones or the saints. Hoi hagioi, the saints, teis ecclesias apokrinotai. The saints of the church answer. Omai e etai, amatha este ontai. Apokrinomai is deponent. That means it only ever occurs in the middle voice. So apokrinomai in the third plural is ontai. Omai e etai, amatha este ontai. The saints of the church answer. They answer him. U dune autos sotsein ten tsukein su hadatheos dunatai. Now, what's this ending? Remember, omai e etai, dunamai is how this word is going to appear in the lexicon. Dune, so second singular. U dune autos. You yourself are not able, sotsein ten tsukein su. You yourself are not able to save your soul. Hadatheos, but God, dunatai, is able to. Udune autasotsen tensuken su hadatheos dunatai. You yourself are not able to save your soul, but God is able to. Ophiles, you must. Therefore you must pistuein auto kai menein ente ecclesia tauta. Therefore you must believe, you must to believe, right? Whenever we see ophilo, or in this case ophiles, we always see that accompanying verb in the infinitive. You must to believe, or as we would just say in good old English, therefore you must believe, dative, in him, kai menein ente ecclesiatate, and to remain. You must to believe, and you must to remain. You must believe and remain in this, near demonstrative, in this church, in this ecclesia. Philemon de apokrinatai, but Philemon answers, Amen poneras kurias ento oiko mu. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out what this word is. Amen. Okay, presuming you paused it, that is the imperfect indicative of a me in the first person singular. If you go to page 47 in your Jeong reader, you see a chart there, but that's just recalling that from page 55 in Croy. So the imperfect indicative of a me, and this is something that you absolutely have to commit to memory, is a main, ace, ain, amen, ete, asan. I think in the homework I provided a song that can help you memorize that. It's got a kind of a rhythm to it. If you are saying this over and over again, amen, ace, a, amen, ete, asan, amen, ace, ain, amen, ete, asan. So that's the first person singular imperfect indicative of a me. I was. That's a long-winded way of translating that as I was. Paneras kurios. I was a bad, evil, wicked, wretched paneras. I was a bad master, ento oikomu, in my house. O philo un erixthai proston oikon mu kai legein meta ton adelphon kai ton dulon perites zoes mu. And we'll pause there for a moment. So, I was a bad master in my house. I must therefore, o phile un, I must therefore erixthai. So if I look up this word in the lexicon, what do I find? I find erkomai. That's deponent, and esthai. That is our middle passive infinitive ending. So erkesthai, to go, right? I must to go. I must therefore go pros ton oikon mu, to my house. Kai legein metaton adelphon kai ton dulon perites zoes mu. So I must to go and I must to speak. I must speak. Metaton adelphon. Pause there for a moment. With tone adelphon. So if you look this up, what gender is that, tone adelphon? Now we know it's plural, but what gender is it? Well, it's masculine. But is he referring to just a group of men or a man and a woman? We know he has a brother and a sister from previously in the text. So it would be inappropriate to translate this as brothers, because we know he's referring to a brother and a sister. But rather than saying brother and sister, the author of this text had grouped them together and said brothers. So in good English, we would translate that as siblings. Okay? Because we know it's his brothers, his brother and sister, his siblings. Therefore, I must go to my house and I must speak with the siblings and the slaves, also plural. Perites zoismu, about my life. I've changed my life. I have now converted to Christ, and I must go to this house and talk to these Gentiles about my life. Thelogar autus lembanen ten agapen tu theou. For I desire them to receive, that's infinitive, lambano is to receive, I desire them to receive ten agapen tu theou, the love of God. Haun philemon mene ente ecclesia, ekegar erga ento oiko autu. Go ahead and pause it and see if you can translate that sentence. Nothing too tricky going on there, so I think you can do it. I have faith in you. Okay, presuming you paused. Haun philemon mene ente ecclesia, ekegar erga ento oiko autu. Philemon doesn't remain in the church, for he has works, plural. He's got a job to do. He's got works to do in his house. Aperkatai un apotes ecclesias proston oikun autu. Remember, erkomai, omai e etai. He goes, therefore he goes from the church. He's going from the church towards his house. With me so far? Let's keep going. Next line. Kai ente aute hemera. Pause there. So ente aute hemera. So we know what is aute. That's that that pronoun that means she, because that's in a feminine. So in the she day, well, that doesn't make sense. What does that mean? Well, if you recall when we were learning this word, when I put it next to the word that it stands in for, it can mean the same, right? Added emphasis. I could, I guess, in theory, translate that as on that day itself, but that would sound strange because we're trying to render this into English that is intelligible. So I would translate that on the same day, so later that day, I guess is another way to say it. On the same day, Um, Let me go ahead and highlight that again. On the same day, Onesimus ento oiko estin. Onesimus is in his house. Ala u blepe uda okue tonkurion autu. Okay, so we're talking about a different character. This guy who was in the church, converted to Christ, and he's got to go back home and talk to his brother and his sister and slaves. That was Philemon. Remember, in your New Testament, Paul writes a letter to Philemon, and he is telling him to forgive his slave and not to be cruel to his slave, Onesimus. So now we're saying at the same time as all of this has been happening, now the story is shifting focus to Onesimus, that runaway slave. On the same day, Onesimus ento oiko estin. Onesimus is in the house. He hasn't left the house yet. He's still there. But ala u blepe uda okue tu kuryu autu. Go ahead and pause there and see if you can translate that sentence. But u blepe, so just a quick note about this word u. Earlier in the text, we saw this word ook. What's the difference between ook and u? Well, there isn't a difference in meaning. It's just that this one has no letter at the end, and this has a chi at the end. Now we're using this form u because the next letter in the sentence is a beta, so that is a consonant. If that were, say, an alpha or any other vowel, then I would put the chi in there. So u blepe, he doesn't see, uda akue, or hear his master. He's in the house alone, and he doesn't hear his master. So, what does the slave want to do with that newfound knowledge? Thele un pariu esthai. Remember, that's that deponent infinitive ending. Therefore, he desires poriu omai, to go. He desires poriu esthai ente hodo para tu oiku tu kaku kuryu pras alein gain. Ente hodo, in the way or in the road. He desires, therefore, to go in the road. Para tu oiku. Now, para can mean beside, but it can also mean from. If I have para plus the genitive, and how do I know this? Well, if you just look up para in the lexicon, actually, go ahead and do that right now. Pause the video and look up para in your lexicon. That is in the back of your Croy reader. Presuming you did that now, that is on page 249. Am I right there? Yeah, page 249. I look at para and I see what's the definition. Para plus genitive is from, plus dative is beside, with, or among, plus accusative is by or along. We see it in the genitive. Para tu oiku. He desires therefore to go in the road from his house of the bad lord, of his bad master, pras alein gain, towards another land. So a quick note. If you are still working on learning vocab, which I know all of you are at this point, you might have thought, how do I memorize that para, please, plus genitive equals one thing, plus the dative it equals another thing, plus the accusative it equals another thing? Well, to tell you the truth, I would have had to look that up to see it. I've just read so much Greek and I've seen the word para in so many contexts that I know in this context, that is, he wants to go in the road para, his house, towards another land. I would have read that sentence so fast that my brain would have passively thought para can only mean one thing. If it's in one place that he is, the house of the bad lord, and another place where he's going, that is to another land, para can only mean from. And if you read enough Greek, your brain will start to do this as well. He desires to go in the house, in the road from his house of the bad lord towards another land. Ala ente aute hora. So similar in here. Ente aute mera. How did we translate that? On the same day. Now we have the same thing happening here. Ente aute hora. What's hora? That's hour or time. But in that very same hour, at the same time, eis erikatai hophilemon eis ton oikon. At the same time, Philemon is going to his house. So we've got Onesimus. He's leaving his house because, hey, my master's not home. I can get out. And as he's leaving, he sees his master coming down the road at him. It's kind of a comical situation. Onesimus un heuriske lithan umikron kaimene met auton. So go ahead and pause this right now and try and translate that sentence. So to be honest, when I read this the first time, I translated it one way, which was completely plausible, but there's a different way to translate it. So Onesimus un, therefore Onesimus, heuriske, finds, remember, eureka means I found it. Heuriske, he finds, lithon, umikron, that is a stone, not small. He finds a big stone, kai mene met auton. So mene remains, met auton. Met plus the accusative. Do the same exercise as you did before with para. That is look up met in the back, and you see it paired with an accusative, and it means behind. So Onesimus finds a big stone, not a small stone. He finds a big stone and remains behind it. Now auton, it. What is that standing in for? Well, I think the original author wanted this to stand in for stone. He finds a big stone and hides behind it. Auton could also, if you're reading it a little bit incorrectly, as I did the first time, you would have thought, well, maybe that auton stands for his master. Right, he sees his master coming down the road. Oh, what does he do? Well, he finds a big stone and he stands behind him. So in my mind, I was thinking, oh, my master's coming. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to kill him. So he runs and finds a big stone and gets behind his master. Completely plausible way to read this. However, I don't think that's what the author was going for. The author wants you to say, Onesimus un heuriske lithon. He finds a stone, umikron, not a little one, kai mene met auton, and hides behind it and remains behind it. You don't have the word for hide yet, so he's saying he remains behind it. Philemon un, and therefore Philemon dunatai heuriskein auton. Therefore, because he's hiding behind the stone, Philemon is not able to find him. Aloi un duloi apostellontai hupo Philemonas heuriskein onesimas. Therefore, other slaves, aloi un duloi apostellontai. So if I were to look apostellontai in the lexicon, what would I find? Apostello. And so I've got this middle passive ending here, omai e etai, amatha este ontai. So apostello means I send, apostel ontai, are sent. So therefore other slaves are sent, hupo Philemonas, by Philemon, heuriskein Onesimus, to find Onesimus. Onesimus de aere arton kai aperketai ektu oiku. But Philemon, so the slaves are going out, they're looking for Onesimus. Onesimus day, but Onesimus, aere, takes up or takes arton, some bread, kai aperketai, and goes away, ektu oiku, out of the house. So he grabs some bread and he runs away. Now, because he did that, we'll see what happens next. Hodeduloi tu Onesimus legusin. So, but the slaves, that's plural, hoiduloi, but the slaves to genitive, just a constant review here. That's because I don't want you to forget it. I want you to keep learning these case endings. That's one of your big tasks this summer, is to be able to read those case endings and know what they mean. Hodeduloi tu Philemonas, but the slaves of Philemon legusin, they say, Udunamatha heuriskein auton ento oiko uda ente hodo and te peri ton oikon uda para te thalassa te metaton oikon ti un ophilamon poien. Go ahead and pause the video right now and see if you can translate that whole paragraph by yourself. But the servants of Philemon say, Udunamatha, remember dunamai, omai e etai, Amatha, so that's the first plural. We are not able, Huriskein, to find Auton, him. We're not able to find him uh, in the house, ento oiko, ura ente horo, neither in the road. Which road? Te periton oikon, the around the house one. We're not able to find him in the house. Neither are we able to find him in the road around the house. Uda, neither. Para te thalisa, by the lake. Te meta ton oikon, the one behind the house. We're not able to find him around in the house, nor on the road around the house, nor in the lake behind the house. I guess he's got some really excellent property there. Ti uno filamen poyen. Therefore, what are we supposed to do? What must we do? Metatauta. After these things, again, I had said last class that that's a very common turn of phrase in the New Testament. Metatauta. Now, after this is typically how the New Testament would translate it. But tauta, of course, is plural. So literally, after these things, metatauta, onesimus, dierketai, dierimon. Pause there for a moment. This is a little bit redundant, but it doesn't mean anything. We can still translate it the same way as we would if the redundancy wasn't there. Di erkatai, di erimon. So go through. We could have just said erkamai, di erimon. Go through. That is, of course, from dia, means to go through something. Onesimus through goes, dierkatai goes through, dierimon, through the desert. After these things, Onesimus goes through the desert. Kai erkatai ace alengain, and he goes to, or he comes to, another gain, another land. And he gets there, Kai Onesimus lege, and he says, Amen doulos. What is amen? Remember, amen ace ain, amen ete ason. That's the imperfect indicative of ami. Amen, I was a slave, ala nun doulos uke me. But now I am not a slave. I was a slave, but now I am not a slave. Hati uk echo kurion, because I do not have a master. Onesimus un erketai esthien ton artan kurio autu kai ublepe ton oklan peri autan. Had oklas aperketai legen peri autu. Go ahead and pause there and see if you can translate that whole section. Nothing too tricky. Okay. Therefore, Onesimus ap erketai begins. Therefore, Onesimus begins esthein from estheo. We've got an infinitive ending. Therefore, Onesimus begins to eat the bread of his master. Kai u blepe ton oklam perioton. And he doesn't see the crowd around him. So I'm imagining him walking through the desert. He thinks he's in a private area. He sits down, takes out the bread, starts eating it. He's absolutely famished because he's been walking so long and he's so hungry that he doesn't see this crowd that's starting to gather around him. Hode aklas archetai legin peri autu. And the crowd, hode aklas, and the crowd begins to speak about him or concerning him or physically in the perimeter around him. The crowd about him begins to speak. The crowd says, Ha'aklas lege, tis estin ha'anthropos hutas. Who is this man? Remember, the very first reading we had in Jeong, tis e su. We got that sigma there at the end. Tis, who? Or if the sigma wasn't there and we just had t, that would be what. So what talks about a thing, who talks about a person. Tis estin ha'anthropos hutas. Who is the man, this one? Who is this man? Uk ain. Pause the video and try and figure out what ain is. If you're still looking at the middle of page 55, paragraph 67 in Croy, you would see ain. One of the most common words in the whole New Testament is was. He, she, or it was. Not was before or once hutas entegeheimon in our land. So, um, and we have he, she, or it already baked into this verb. So, this one, he, this one was not before in our land. Okay, that's a little bit clunky. How would that sound in good English? We'd say, this one or this person was not in our land before. That's how Jeong wants you to translate it, as you see written in the back of his book. This person was not in our land before. Un, therefore, genoskamen. What is amen? Pause the video and try and figure it out. I'm hoping that by now you have the present active indicative memorized like the back of your hand. O, ace, a, amen, ete, use. That's that third plural, present active indicative. We know, genoskomen, we know. Therefore, we know that from par ales geis ergetai. So, what is this word? That is para, and I'm putting it next to ales. Ales. And these two alphas, they don't like each other, so one of them is going to lose out, get replaced with apostrophe, and pronounce this all one word. Parales geis ergetai. That is, from another land comes, he comes. Therefore, we know that he comes from another land. How do they know that? Well, because he's not been here before and must be a very small town. We don't like your kind around here, they might be saying. Opheilomen, so we must to lift up. Opheilomen irein kai agein auton eis tain ecclesion. What is that? That's accusative. What are they doing? We must irein to pick up, kai again, and to lead, auton him, ace tain ecclesion, into the assembly, into our local little courthouse. You know, if you've ever watched the movie Cars, the Pixar movie Cars, which I have fortunately or unfortunately seen many, many times now because I have going on 3-year-old. The main character, Lightning McQueen, he gets sent into that that little courthouse with like 8 or so other people in it, and it turns into this bit of a kangaroo court. And you can imagine that's what's happening right here. O Philemon irein kai agen auton estain ecclesion. We must pick him up and lead him to the assembly, or bring him to the assembly. He ecclesia gar eke exousian crinen kai apoctenein. They have already figured out what they want to do to him. He ecclesia, the church, or excuse me, not in this context. In this context, the assembly, gar, for this assembly, for the assembly, eke exousion. What is exousion? That's authority. Why do they want to lead him there? Because they have the authority, or excuse me, not they, this is singular, the church, the assembly, he has, or it has the authority, krinein, to judge, kai apoktenein, and to kill. Ha un aklas, aire ton arton, kai age onisimon, eis tain ecclesion. Go ahead and pause there and see if you can translate that sentence. All right. Therefore, the crowd, these people that are gathering around him, Arenton Arton, pick up the bread, take the bread away from him, Kai Age, and lead Onesimus Eistain Ecclesian, and lead him to the assembly. Hode Onesimus Amelin Esthien, comma. We'll pause there. Okay. I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure out what this word is. Amelin. What is that? And I've given you a hint right there in case you're stumped. If you had turned to page 55 in Croy, you would see that a melon is is one of the possible forms of the imperfect of mellow. So if I were to look this up in the lexicon, I would see mellow like that. And what does that mean? It means I am about to. And when we're working with it in the imperfect and we put our imperfect ending on there, it's possible, and in some cases we see an epsilon in the beginning, but because we are learning a language that was a very much alive spoken language, and depending on where you were speaking, if you were speaking in Athens, or if you were speaking in North Africa, or if you were speaking this language in Egypt or in Israel, they would have had different spellings and different dialects. And so all of that sort of got blended together, and now we get this beautiful cacophony of words that we call the New Testament. So sometimes this word doesn't have an epsilon in front. In fact, it has an eta in front in the imperfect, just like the word ethelon. If you look at the example just above that on page 55. If you haven't found it now, really, please pause the video, go to page 55 in Croy, and read that section right at the top of the page. So, he was about to hode Onesimus a Melanestheane, but Onesimus was about to eat. And then this crowd came up and took that bread away from him and led him to the place where he could die. Ala nun udunatai estheane. But now udunatai, he's not able, estheane, to eat. Hode Onesimus a Melen estheane, ala nun udunatai estheane, hati ha'artas iretai. What does that mean? Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out what that word is. Right. If you were to look that up in the lexicon, what would you see? You'd see I don't know why I just made my Yoda that big. I row, which means I lift, I pick up. I retai, so we know that this is not a deponent verb, and yet it's got that middle passive ending, so we're pretty sure that that's a passive. Omai a etai is the ending that we have there. So, but now he is not able to eat because the bread, in the nominative case, ha artos, the bread, is taken or is picked up autu, from him. Ti mele ginesthai. All right, pause the video and try and figure out what this is. Ginesthai, what is that? Right, ginomai is the root, and that means to happen or to become, or to be in some instances. So ti mele ginesthai, and so since that is deponent, and we see esthai, that's the infinitive ending of our deponent verbs. Remember, deponent is a verb that only appears in the middle passive form. We never see it in the active. Ti mele ginesthai, what about to happen? What is about to happen? And then they're trying to create an element of suspense here because we've got this question mark at the end. Remember, ancient Greek didn't have punctuation. And so the scribes, when they were trying to signify that something was likely a question, it would be a semicolon. So that is a question mark right there, all the way back from lesson 1, if you recall. But now he's not able to eat because the bread is taken autu, from him. Remember, apo is the word from, and we are beginning here with a vowel, so that omicron is getting knocked off and replaced with an apostrophe. Autu, pronounce that as one word. Autu. Everybody say with me, autu. Ala nun unudunatai esthien hati artas iretai autu. Ti mele ginesthai. What is going to happen? Meleonissimus apoktenesthai, about Onesimus to die, is or to be killed, and that's the passive. So apokteno is how that would appear in the lexicon. And this esthai is that passive infinitive ending. I hope that's second nature by now. So to be killed, apokteno, kill, apothnesko, die. Meleonissimus excuse me, Meleonissimus apoktenesthai, question mark. You got to inflect your voice at the ending there. Is Onesimus about to be killed? What's going to happen to him? Is he about to be killed? Tune in next time, because that is the end of the story. Now we're going to go ahead and assume that he isn't killed, because we have 2/3 of this book left and he is still a consequential character. All right, I hope that was profitable for you. Your goal really should be able to read this entire story, Jeong 1 through 10, over the summer. Your goal should be able to read all of Jeong 1 through 10 without helps. Now, I get it. If you got to look up a word here and there, that's okay. But your goal should be able to read it in its entirety without looking anything up. And if you can do that, you are in a very strong spot to continue to level 2, which we'll do lessons 11 through 20. If you can't do that, you can still go on to lesson 2. It's just you may have to, excuse me, to level 2, but you may be fumbling over a couple things, and we're going to have a whole lot of new stuff coming our way. So that should be your goal. Read Jeong chapters 1 through 10 with very minimal aid. That doesn't mean you can't use aid, but minimal help. All right. All right. Well, God's peace to everyone. I wish blessings on your studies this summer, and God be with all of you.